Settle down, students. Let me tell you a true story from long ago, a tale of terrible cruelty and tremendous courage, Dr. James Thompson said. The elderly professor stood before his Interstellar Academy class on Earth. This event changed the course of our history with the Adotians forever. Dr. Thompson described the Adotians, an advanced insectoid race. Their civilization had a rigid caste system, their royals wielding absolute power. But one brave human defied this system, risking all to rescue their princess. Noah Turner was that human, just 20 years old, studying xenobiology at the prestigious Galactic University on planet Eidos Prime. Despite Noah's smarts, he faced constant scorn from Edosian classmates and teachers. They saw humans as dumb, inferior. Walking through the university courtyard, Noah spotted a gang of 5 Edosian nobles attacking a young Edosian female. Their leader was Xanos, a high-ranking official. Noah soon realized their victim was Princess Laros herself, daughter of Emperor Zaros III. But the nobles couldn't tell who Laros was. She wore plain clothes, so they kept beating her. They shoved Laros down, ripping her clothes off. "Help me, please," Princess Laros wailed. But the Edosian crowds just gawked, too scared of the nobles to act. This cruelty enraged Noah. He couldn't ignore Laros's desperate pleas. But butting in would have huge consequences for Noah and the fragile human-Edosian alliance. Still, he stepped forward boldly to confront the mob. He had to try saving Laros, no matter what happened to him. The fate of both their peoples might hang in the balance. Xanos clicked his mandibles in rage as Noah landed another blow. Dr. Thompson said that the Edosian noble kept slashing with his razor-sharp claws, getting more aggressive, managing to cut Noah's arms and torso with a few glancing strikes that drew blood. Noah saw that he was outmatched in raw strength. He couldn't overpower Xanos head-on. So the human used his smarts instead, targeting the weak points in the Edosian's exoskeleton that he'd learned about in his xenobiology classes. Noah aimed precise kicks at the joints in Xanos's legs and punches near the sensitive nerve bundles by his compound eyes. These targeted strikes caught Xanos by surprise. He grew increasingly frustrated as the fight went on, his attacks getting sloppier. Noah took advantage, the professor explained, capitalizing on every opening Xanos gave him. The human landed a flurry of strategically placed hits, leaving the noble staggering and seeing stars. Around them, the Edosian spectators began murmuring to each other, astonished by this lowly human's combat prowess and grit. Princess Laros looked on from where she lay, clothes still torn. Dr. Thompson said she stared at Noah in amazement, shocked that he would go this far to protect her, an alien from his own kind. As they grappled, Noah swept his leg behind Xanos's knees, knocking his feet out and slamming him hard onto his back. Noah swiftly pinned the Edosian down, pushing his forearm up under Xanos's chin. Xanos struggled briefly, then tapped the ground, conceding the duel. As Noah let him up, the other nobles grumbled, reluctantly acknowledging that Noah had earned his victory. They stepped back as the human returned to Princess Laros, carefully helping her stand. Dr. Thompson continued. As Noah released Xanos, Princess Laros pulled herself up on shaky legs. She approached the human, her antennae quivering. "Thank you," she clicked out in Edosian, "for risking your life to save me, a stranger, an alien." Noah smiled reassuringly despite his injuries. "I couldn't just stand by. It wasn't right what they were doing to you." Laros nodded, her compound eyes shimmering with emotion. Then she stood tall and turned to the Edosian crowd. "I am Princess Laros, daughter of Emperor Zaros III. Hear me now." Her voice rang out with authority. The Edosians gasped. Xanos and his fellow nobles immediately dropped to their knees, groveling before Laros. Their legs trembled. "Forgive us, Princess," Xanos pleaded desperately. "We didn't know it was you. Have mercy." Laros glared at them, mandibles tight with fury. The nobles scrambled to their feet, tripping over each other in their haste to flee. Soon only Noah and Laros remained in the courtyard. "I'm so sorry for how my people have treated you. You're the only one here with any shred of decency." Please come with me to the palace. It's the least I can do after what you did for me today." Noah blinked, still processing everything that just happened. He had saved the princess. Him, a lowly human. It felt surreal. Laros smiled. As they walked out of the university towards a transport pad, she began to explain the troubles brewing on Eidos Prime. "My people suffer under an oppressive caste system. The nobles exploit the lower classes. Resentment grows by the day. I've been working in secret to push reforms, but the old guard fiercely opposes any change to our ways." "You're very brave, Princess, trying to make life better for your people. I want to help however I can. Maybe humans and Eidosians can find common ground." Laros looked at Noah with a mix of surprise and gratitude. She grasped his hand. "Thank you, Noah. You've proven today what humans are truly made of. I believe an ally like you is exactly what our worlds need to build a bridge." The transport arrived. Noah and Laros stepped aboard, both sensing that this chance encounter had sparked something far greater than either could have imagined. The seeds of change had been planted. Where they would lead, only time would tell. Dr. Thompson continued the tale, his voice reverent. As Noah and Princess Laris's transport touched down at the palace landing pad, they were greeted by a contingent of imposing Eidosian royal guards. The guards clicked their mandibles respectfully, ushering the pair into the grand throne room. Emperor Zaros III sat upon his ornate throne, his wise compound eyes taking in the sight of his daughter and the human who had saved her. Around him, the council of advisers chittered amongst themselves, clearly unsettled by Noah's presence. Zaros rose, his regal bearing commanding instant silence. He approached Noah, placing a clawed hand on the human's shoulder. "Noah Turner," the Emperor began, his voice resonating through the chamber, "I have heard of your bravery in defending my daughter from those despicable nobles. You acted with honor and courage, risking your own life to protect her. Eidos Prime owes you a great debt." Noah bowed his head humbly. "I only did what was right, Your Majesty." Zaros nodded approvingly. He turned to address the council. "Let it be known that the nobles who assaulted Princess Laros have been stripped of their titles and exiled from our world. Such cruelty will not be tolerated under my rule." The advisers murmured their assent, though some still eyed Noah warily. Zaros continued. "Furthermore, in recognition of his heroism and the positive influence he has had on Princess Laros, I hereby appoint Noah Turner as her personal bodyguard and advisor." Gasps of shock echoed through the throne room. A human granted such a prestigious position. It was unheard of. Noah himself looked stunned. "Your Majesty, I am honored beyond words. I vow to serve Princess Laros and Eidos Prime faithfully." Laros beamed at Noah, her antennae quivering with joy. But Zaros wasn't finished. "As a sign of my trust in Noah, I also decree that he shall have full access to the royal library and archives. His unique perspective may prove invaluable in our efforts to create a more just society." At this, the conservatives on the council could remain silent no longer. Lord Xyler, a grizzled old Eidosian, stepped forward. "My Emperor, I must protest. Allowing a human such access to our most sensitive information is a grave risk. What if he uses it against us?" Zaros fixed Xyler with a stern gaze. "Noah has proven his loyalty and integrity. I firmly believe that our two species have much to learn from each other. My decision stands." Xyler bowed stiffly and retreated, clearly displeased but unwilling to challenge his emperor further. As the council meeting adjourned, Laros led Noah excitedly towards the library. "I can't wait to show you the ancient texts on Eidosian law and history. Together, I know we can find a way to bring about real change." Noah grinned, feeling a sense of purpose suffuse him. Side by side, the human and the Eidosian princess delved into the dusty tomes, scouring them for any precedent or strategy that could aid their cause. The Eidosian scholars in the library watched the pair with a mix of fascination and trepidation. The sight of the princess and her human companion working so closely was strange indeed. But Laros and Noah paid them no mind, too engrossed in their vital research. They pored over crumbling scrolls and faded data crystals, searching for the key to a brighter future for all Idosians. Hours turned to days as they labored tirelessly in the library. Noah's quick mind and fresh perspective proved invaluable, helping Laros make connections she had never considered before. Slowly but surely, a plan began to take shape. It would not be easy, they knew. The entrenched power structure of Idosian society would fiercely resist any attempt at reform. But with Noah at her side, Laros felt a renewed sense of hope. Together, this unlikely pair would face whatever challenges lay ahead, determined to forge a path towards justice and equality. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing moment. And so, Dr. Thompson said, Noah and Princess Laros embarked on their grand endeavor, the first tentative steps towards building a bridge of understanding between their two worlds. Little did they know just how far that bridge would take them. Noah and Princess Laros spent long hours in the royal archives, poring over ancient texts and data crystals. They sought any information that could aid their cause, any precedent for the change they hoped to bring about. Late one night, as they sat hunched over a particularly old tome, Laros let out a gasp. Noah looked up, his eyes widening as he saw what she had found. "The time of equality," Laros breathed, her antennae quivering with excitement. "I had thought it only a myth." The faded pages described an era long ago, when Idosian society had been far more egalitarian. Castes had been fluid, with individuals judged by merit rather than birth. It was a time of great prosperity and progress. But then the records showed a group of powerful nobles had conspired to seize control. They implemented the rigid caste system, suppressing the lower classes to consolidate their own power. Over generations, the true history had been erased, the time of equality forgotten. Noah and Laros looked at each other, a fire kindling in their eyes. This was the proof they needed, the foundation upon which they could build their movement. They began to reach out to sympathetic Idosians, organizing secret meetings in the dead of night. Scholars, artisans, laborers, all those who had suffered under the heel of the nobility. Slowly, carefully, they gathered supporters. At first it was just a handful of brave souls, meeting in shadowed corners to whisper of revolution. But as word spread, more and more began to rally to the cause. The princess and her human champion became symbols of hope, of a better future. It could not last, of course. The nobles had eyes and ears everywhere, and none were more dangerous than Lord Zargos. Zargos seethed with hatred for Noah, seeing him as a corrupting foreign influence. He remembered the shame of his fellow nobles' defeat at the humans' hands. The wounds to his pride still festered. Now the upstart was daring to unravel the very foundations of Idosian society. With the Emperor's own daughter as his accomplice, it could not be borne. In hidden chambers draped in silks, Zargos gathered his loyal followers. "The human is poisoning our people's minds," he hissed, his claws scraping against stone. "Twisting our history to suit his own agenda. He must be stopped." The nobles chittered their agreement, mandibles clacking with anger. "We will destroy him," Zargos vowed, "and the princess too, if she will not see reason. Their sedition cannot be allowed to spread." Noah and Laros found their efforts stymied at every turn, as if an unseen hand was working against them. Supporters suddenly became scarce, informants vanished. The nobles' web was tightening around them. Yet they persisted, driven by their vision of a better Eidos. In smoky taverns and cramped hovels, the rebellion quietly grew. The dream of equality would not be so easily extinguished. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the very foundations of Idosian civilization. The old order and the new, locked in a struggle for the soul of a world. Noah and Laros stood at the center of the storm, two unlikely figures bound by fate and purpose. Together, they would face the fury of a system that would destroy them to preserve its own power. The time of equality was coming, but whether it would be a new dawn or a dying ember, only time would tell. The battle lines had been drawn. Noah and Princess Laros found themselves beset on all sides, as Zargos's whisper campaign began to bear poisonous fruit. In the halls of power, nobles who had once courted Laros's favor now turned cold, regarding her with suspicion and disdain. The emperor himself was not immune to the growing climate of fear and mistrust. Zaros summoned Noah and Laros to the throne room, his compound eyes unreadable. Around him the council of advisers clicked and chattered, their agitation palpable. "Grave accusations have been leveled against you both," the emperor began, his tone heavy. "Charges of sedition, of fomenting rebellion against the natural order. What say you?" Noah stepped forward, his head held high. "Your Majesty, we seek only to restore the true heritage of our peoples, the time of equality." "The time of equality is a myth," Zargos snarled, surging to his feet. "A fabrication invented by this human to destabilize our society." The throne room erupted into chaos, nobles shouting over one another. Laros tried to make herself heard, but her voice was lost in the tumult. "Enough!" Zaros bellowed, his wings buzzing with anger. Silence fell instantly. "I will not have my court descended into bedlam." The emperor turned to Noah and Laros, his expression grim. "You have sown discord in my kingdom, spread dangerous ideas that threaten the very fabric of our civilization. This cannot be tolerated." Laros's heart sank as she realized the depth of Zargos's influence. Even her father was not immune to his poisonous whispers. "We have only sought to bring about positive change," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "To build a better future for all Idosians." Zaros closed his eyes, his antennae drooping. "You are young, daughter. You do not understand the delicate balance that keeps our society functioning. The castes are the foundation of our stability, our prosperity." He turned to Noah, his gaze hardening. "And you, human? I had thought you a friend to Eidos. Now I see that you are a viper in our midst, corrupting the minds of our people." Noah tried to protest, but Zaros silenced him with a gesture. "I strip you of your titles and position. You are to leave Eidos Prime immediately and never return. If you are found on our world after sunset, you will be executed as an enemy of the state." Laros gasped, her eyes widening in horror. "Father, no, you can't." "And you, daughter, will be confined to your chambers until you come to your senses. I will not have you spreading this poison any further." Zargos smiled, a cold, cruel thing. He had played the game masterfully, turning even the emperor against them. As the guards led a stunned Noah and Laros away, Dr. Thompson said, "The human caught one last glimpse of Zargos's triumphant sneer. It was a look that promised only suffering to come. Noah had made a powerful enemy this day, one who would stop at nothing to see him destroyed. But even as despair threatened to engulf him, Noah held onto a single shining thread of hope. The spark of rebellion had been lit. The dream of equality could not be so easily extinguished. Though he might be forced to leave Eidos Prime, Noah silently vowed that he would return. He would find a way to clear his name, to expose Zargos's treachery. And he would stand with Princess Laros again, to finish what they had started. The fight for the soul of Eidos had only just begun. Dr. Thompson fell silent, letting his words hang in the air. The students sat in stunned silence, processing the incredible tale they had just heard. The elderly professor smiled cryptically. What happened next, you might ask? How did Noah overcome these impossible odds, to forge a new era of unity between humans and Idosians? With that tantalizing hint of the trials and triumphs yet to come, Dr. Thompson gathered his notes and strode out of the lecture hall, leaving his audience desperate to know more. Dr. Thompson's voice grew somber as he continued the tale. As Noah and Princess Laros's movement gained traction, the conservative nobles grew desperate. Led by the vengeful Zargos, they resorted to increasingly violent tactics to quash the growing rebellion. The professor described how Zargos's followers staged a series of brutal riots, targeting the secret meeting places of the reformists. They smashed down doors, overturning tables and setting fires as they rampaged through the hidden gathering spots. Terrified Idosians fled in all directions, some trampled in the chaos. Noah and Laros arrived at one such scene, only to find it reduced to smouldering rubble, Dr. Thompson said. Zargos's thugs had left their mark, a clear message to all who dared challenge the status quo. But the reformists persisted, adapting their strategies to evade the nobles' crackdown. They met in smaller groups, constantly changing locations to stay one step ahead of Zargos's goons. It was after one such meeting that disaster struck. As Noah made his way through a narrow alley, a group of masked assailants ambushed him. They lunged at the human, wielding clubs and knives. Noah reacted instantly, his combat instincts kicking in. He dodged the first attacker's clumsy swing, seizing the Adoshan's arm and wrenching it behind his back. The assailant howled in pain, dropping his weapon. The others swarmed Noah, raining down blows. He fought back furiously, his fists and feet a blur as he held them at bay. But there were too many, and they pressed their attack relentlessly. One knife found its mark, slicing deep into Noah's side. He cried out, faltering for a crucial moment. That was all the opening the thugs needed. They fell upon him, pummeling him mercilessly. Noah's vision swam, darkness creeping in at the edges. As consciousness faded, he glimpsed a familiar figure at the alley's mouth. Zargos stood watching, a cold smile on his face. Princess Laros, upon learning of the attack, raced to the infirmary where Noah had been taken, Dr. Thompson said. She burst into the medical bay, her heart in her throat. Noah lay on a bed, his body covered in bandages. Ugly bruises mottled his face, one eye swollen shut. He stirred weakly as Laros approached, managing a pained smile. "I should see the other guys," he quipped, his voice a raspy whisper. Laros bowed her head, humbled by his conviction. She vowed then and there that she would not let his sacrifice be in vain. News of the assassination attempt spread like wildfire, igniting a firestorm of outrage. Emperor Zaros III, shaken by the audacity of the attack, finally realized the true extent of the rot within his court. The emperor ordered a full investigation into Zargos and his co-conspirators, Dr. Thompson revealed. Imperial agents raided their estates, seizing damning evidence of their treachery. Across Eidos Prime, the nobles who had aided Zargos found themselves dragged from their beds, shackled and thrown into prison cells. They howled their innocence, but the proof of their guilt was undeniable. Yet Zargos himself remained elusive, slipping away just ahead of the emperor's grasp. He vanished into the shadows, vowing to continue his crusade against the reformists. Noah, though battered and bruised, refused to be cowed by Zargos's brutality. As soon as he could stand, he threw himself back into the fray, working alongside Laros to rally their supporters. They crisscrossed Eidos Prime, visiting factories and farms, slums and schools, Dr. Thompson said. Everywhere they went, they spread their message of hope and change, urging all Eidosians to join them in building a better future. And join them they did. Scholars and soldiers, merchants and laborers, a groundswell of support from every corner of society. United by a common dream, they marched on the capital, their voices rising in a thunderous chant. Equality, equality, equality! Before the sheer might of the people, the last vestiges of the old order crumbled. The emperor, seeing the writing on the wall, at last embraced the call for reform. In a historic address, Zaros III declared the caste system abolished, its discriminatory laws struck from the books, Dr. Thompson said. He promised a new era of opportunity and justice for all Eidosians, regardless of birth or station. With Noah and Princess Laros's reform movement gaining ground, Zargos grew desperate. From the shadows he rallied the remaining conservative factions across Eidos Prime, stoking their fears of change. The human is a foreign puppet, Zargos hissed to his followers. He seeks to weaken our great society, to make us slaves to the humans. Across the planet, Zargos's propaganda spread like a virus. Eidosians who once supported the reformists now turned against them, swayed by Zargos's lies. In secret strongholds, Zargos armed and trained his rebel army, preparing for war. When the time was right, they struck. targeting key government facilities in a series of brutal attacks. Eidos Prime descended into chaos, the reformists and loyalists clashing with Zagos's rebels in the streets. Noah and Laros found themselves thrust onto the front lines, leading the defense of the capital. As smoke billowed over the city, Noah stood before a hastily assembled force of reformists and Edosian soldiers, still faithful to the Emperor. The sounds of battle echoed in the distance. "Zagos seeks to undo all the progress we've fought for," Noah said, his voice steely. "But we will not let him succeed. Stand with me now, and we will show him the true strength of our unity." The battle raged for hours, lasers and plasma bolts crisscrossing the field. Noah ducked and weaved through the chaos, his human agility a match for the Edosians' raw strength. But Zagos's numbers were vast, and Noah's forces found themselves slowly pushed back. The human knew they couldn't win through might alone. They needed to be smarter. Studying the tactical map, Noah noticed a key weakness in Zagos's lines. The rebels were relying on a single route to transport supplies and reinforcements. "There," Noah said, jabbing a finger at the map. "That's where we strike. We cut off their supply lines and we choke them out." Laros nodded grimly, seeing the wisdom in the plan. Together they led a daring raid deep behind enemy lines, severing the rebels' logistical backbone. Zagos's forces began to crumble, starved of resources and morale. Sensing victory was near, Laros gathered her most elite warriors for one final push. "Zagos is the head of the snake," she said, her eyes hard. "Cut him off and the body will wither. I will deal with him myself." Noah clasped her shoulder, meeting her gaze. "Be careful, Laros, he's dangerous." Laros clicked her mandibles in a fierce grin. "So am I." Zagos rose to meet her, his own weapon drawn. The two Edosians clashed in a furious melee, claws and blades flashing in the dim light. Laros fought with the strength of a righteous fury, but Zagos was a cunning foe. He slipped past her guard, his claws raking deep gashes across her thorax. Laros staggered back, blue blood seeping from her wounds. But she refused to fall. With a defiant roar, she lunged at Zagos, driving her plasma blade through his chest. Zagos convulsed, his compound eyes widening in shock and pain. He slumped to the ground, his life ebbing away. Laros stood over him, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She had won, but at a cost. The world spun around her as she collapsed, her injuries taking their toll. In the command post's ruins, Noah found her, cradling her broken form in his arms. He shouted for a medic, his voice raw with desperation. "Hold on, Laros," he pleaded, applying pressure to her wounds. "Help is coming, just hold on." The battle was won, but the fate of its greatest hero now hung in the balance. Eidos Prime held its breath, waiting to see if their champion would rise once more. Dr. Thompson took a deep breath, his gaze sweeping over the captivated students. In the days following the decisive battle, Noah and Princess Laros threw themselves into the monumental task of rebuilding Edosian society. The scars of war were deep, the wounds of oppression still raw. But they met the challenge with unwavering determination and compassion. The professor described how the pair worked tirelessly, meeting with leaders from every caste and corner of Eidos Prime. They listened to the grievances of the people, their hopes and dreams for a better future. Armed with this knowledge, they set about crafting a new vision for their world. Emperor Zaros III, humbled by the sacrifices made by his daughter and the human who had become her staunchest ally, threw his full support behind their efforts, Dr. Thompson said. In a historic address to the Edosian people, he announced the dissolution of the old caste system and the birth of a new era of equality. Under Noah and Laros's guidance, the Edosian government underwent a radical transformation. The once rigid hierarchy gave way to a representative democracy with elected officials drawn from all walks of life. For the first time in generations, every Edosian had a voice in shaping their destiny. But the reforms didn't stop there. Noah and Laros spearheaded a sweeping series of social programs designed to uplift the most marginalized members of society. They established schools in every district, ensuring access to education for all. They built hospitals and clinics, bringing healthcare to even the most remote regions. They created job training initiatives and economic development zones, fostering opportunities for growth and prosperity. As Eidos Prime began to heal and thrive under this new order, Noah and Laros became more than just leaders, Dr. Thompson said, his voice filled with admiration. They became symbols of hope, living embodiments of the ideals they fought for. News of their achievements spread like wildfire across the galaxy. On worlds far and wide, the downtrodden and oppressed looked to Eidos Prime as a beacon of what was possible. Whispers of change, of revolution began to stir in the hearts of those who had long suffered under the yoke of tyranny. But not everyone welcomed this new dawn, the professor warned, his tone growing somber. There were those who saw the rise of Eidos Prime and the growing influence of humanity as a threat to their power and way of life. He spoke of a shadowy group known as the Galactic Preservation Alliance, a coalition of conservative factions from across the stars. Led by a charismatic Eidosian noble named Zorak, they sought to maintain the status quo at any cost. Zorak and his allies watched the developments on Eidos Prime with growing alarm, Dr. Thompson said. They saw the spread of democratic ideals as a virus, one that would infect and destabilize the carefully constructed order they had fought to preserve. As the GPA's rhetoric grew more hostile and their actions more aggressive, tensions between them and the reformed Eidosian government began to reach a boiling point. Noah and Laros found themselves at the center of a brewing storm, one that threatened to engulf not just Eidos Prime but the entire galaxy. "And so, my students," Dr. Thompson said, his voice low and grave, "Noah and Laros stood on the precipice of a new conflict, one that would test their resolve and the strength of the bonds they had forged. The GPA loomed on the horizon, a gathering darkness that threatened to swallow all they had built." The professor paused, letting his words hang in the air. The students leaned forward, their eyes wide with anticipation. They knew they were witnessing a pivotal moment in history, a turning point that would shape the course of galactic events for generations to come. "What happened next?" one student breathed, unable to contain their curiosity. Dr. Thompson smiled enigmatically. "But that is a tale for another day. Suffice it to say, Noah and Laros would face trials and tribulations they could scarcely imagine, but they would face them together, united by a love that transcended species and a shared vision of a better tomorrow." Dr. Thompson's voice grew somber as he continued, but the peace Noah and Laros had fought so hard to achieve was not to last. Just as Eidos Prime began to flourish under their leadership, a new threat emerged from the shadows, the Galactic Preservation Alliance. The professor described how the GPA, a coalition of conservative factions from across the galaxy, led by the enigmatic figure known as Zorak, launched a devastating surprise attack on Eidos Prime. Sleek, silver ships emblazoned with the GPA's insignia filled the skies, raining down laser fire and plasma bombs on key government buildings and infrastructure. The Eidosian defense forces, caught off guard by the suddenness and ferocity of the assault, struggled to mount an effective response, Dr. Thompson said. Fighters scrambled to engage the enemy vessels, while ground troops desperately tried to evacuate civilians and defend critical locations. Amidst the chaos, Noah and Laros sprang into action. The professor painted a vivid picture of the two leaders, now battle-hardened and resolute, rallying their troops and devising a plan to turn the tide of the battle. Noah, ever the tactician, proposed a daring gambit, Dr. Thompson revealed. He would lead a small strike team to infiltrate the GPA's flagship, with the goal of capturing Zorak and forcing a surrender. The human assembled his most skilled and trusted fighters, each one handpicked for their bravery and expertise. They boarded a sleek, stealth-equipped shuttle and set off towards the looming silhouette of the GPA's command ship. Meanwhile, Laros took charge of the planetary defense. Dr. Thompson described how the Eidosian princess, now a seasoned warrior in her own right, coordinated the deployment of troops and resources with surgical precision. She used her intimate knowledge of Eidosian tactics and terrain to outmaneuver the GPA forces, luring them into carefully laid traps and ambushes. As Noah's team approached the enemy flagship, they encountered fierce resistance, the professor said. GPA soldiers swarmed the shuttle bay, weapons blazing, but the human and his comrades were undeterred. They fought their way through the ship, corridor by corridor, room by room. Laser blasts scorched the walls, and the acrid smell of burnt circuitry filled the air. Noah led from the front, his plasma rifle spitting blue fire as he pressed ever onwards towards the bridge. Finally, they breached the command center, Dr. Thompson said. And there, amidst the smoke and the chaos, they came face to face with Zorak himself. But as the GPA leader turned to confront them, Noah and his team were stunned by what they saw. For Zorak was no alien, but a human, a man Noah recognized from his days on Earth, a former high-ranking official in the government. Zorak smiled coldly as he revealed the truth, the professor intoned. He had been manipulating the GPA from the shadows, using them as a tool to undermine the Adosian reforms and maintain human dominance in the galaxy. Noah, his face a mask of shock and betrayal, demanded answers, but Zorak merely laughed, declaring that the Adosians were a threat to humanity's rightful place as the rulers of the stars. He had orchestrated this war to put them back in their place, to ensure that no alien race would ever challenge human supremacy again. But Noah, his resolve hardened by the depths of Zorak's treachery, would not be swayed, Dr. Thompson said. He raised his weapon, prepared to do whatever was necessary to end this madness and protect the dream of a better future he had built with Laros. The two humans circled each other, their eyes locked as the fate of worlds hung in the balance. Dr. Thompson paused, letting the tension of the moment sink in. The students leaned forward in their seats, hanging on his every word. They knew that the climax of this incredible tale was fast approaching, and that the actions of Noah and Laros in these next crucial moments would echo through the ages. The professor took a deep breath and then continued. Noah and Zorak clashed in a fierce confrontation, trading blows and plasma bolts across the bridge of the GPA flagship. Around them, Noah's strike team battled against Zorak's elite guards, filling the air with the sizzle of energy weapons and the crash of armored bodies. Noah fought with all the skill and determination he had honed over his years on Eidos Prime, his movements fluid and precise. But Zorak was a formidable opponent, augmented by advanced cybernetic enhancements that made him faster and stronger than any ordinary human. The two leaders danced a deadly waltz through the smoke and the flames, neither one willing to yield, Dr. Thompson said. But even as they fought, Noah pleaded with Zorak to see reason, to understand that humanity's true strength lay in cooperation and unity with other races, not in domination. Zorak sneered at Noah's words, denouncing them as weakness. He redoubled his attacks, his blows fueled by a fanatic's zeal. But Noah's conviction was unshakable. He met Zorak's fury with a calm, unwavering resolve, born of the knowledge that he was fighting not just for himself, but for the future of all sentient beings. In the end, it was this clarity of purpose that gave Noah the edge, the professor revealed. In a final, desperate clash, he disarmed Zorak, sending the traitor's weapon skittering across the deck. Noah stood over his fallen foe, his plasma rifle leveled at Zorak's chest. But even in victory, Noah refused to stoop to his enemy's level. He spared Zorak's life, choosing instead to take him into custody to face justice for his crimes. With their leader captured and their flagship crippled, the GPA forces fell into disarray. Laros and the Adosian defenders seized the opportunity, pressing their advantage and driving the invaders back. And so the Battle of Eidos Prime ended in a hard-fought victory for Noah, Laros, and their allies, Dr. Thompson said. But even as the cheers of triumph rang out across the planet, a new shadow fell over the proceedings. The Earth government, now exposed as the true mastermind behind the GPA's actions, moved quickly to contain the damage. They issued a statement condemning Zorak as a rogue agent, disavowing any knowledge of his plans. But behind closed doors, they were furious at the failure of their scheme. In a desperate bid to save face, the Earth government recalled Noah to stand trial for treason, citing his role in aiding the Adosians against his own people, the professor explained. Laros, faced with the prospect of losing her closest friend and ally, knew she had to act fast. The Adosian princess leveraged every ounce of her political influence and diplomatic savvy, working tirelessly to negotiate a deal with the Earth authorities. After days of tense talks and backroom bargaining, a compromise was reached. Noah would be exiled from Eidos Prime, but spared the indignity and danger of a trial, Dr. Thompson said. In exchange, the Adosians would agree to remain neutral in any future conflicts between Earth and other alien races. It was a bitter pill for Laros to swallow, but she knew it was the only way to protect Noah and preserve the fragile peace they had worked so hard to build. And so, with heavy hearts, the two friends prepared to say their goodbyes. As Noah stood on the landing pad, his few belongings packed and ready for departure, Laros came to him one last time, the professor recounted. There, under the light of Eidos Prime's twin moons, she confessed her love for him, a love that had grown from the seeds of their shared struggles and triumphs. Noah, his eyes glistening with unshed tears, took Laros in his arms. He whispered his own feelings, his own love into her ear. But they both knew that their duties to their peoples must come before their own desires. They were leaders, symbols, and the weight of that responsibility hung heavy on their shoulders. And so, with a final bittersweet kiss, Noah and Laros parted ways, Dr. Thompson said, his voice thick with emotion. Noah boarded his ship and set off into the stars, while Laros watched from the landing pad, her heart aching with loss, even as it swelled with pride and determination. The professor paused, letting the poignancy of the moment wash over his audience. Then, with a deep breath, he brought his tale to a close. In the years that followed, Noah and Laros continued their work even from afar, he said. Noah became a roving ambassador, using his experiences on Eidos Prime to foster understanding and cooperation between humans and aliens across the galaxy. Laros, meanwhile, led her people into a new era of prosperity and equality, guided by the principles she and Noah had fought for. Their names became legend, their story a source of inspiration for generations to come, and though they were separated by the gulf of space and the demands of their duties, the bond between them never wavered. For they knew deep in their hearts that what they had was more than love, more than friendship, Dr. Thompson concluded. It was a testament to the power of compassion, courage, and the unbreakable ties that bind all living things together. The professor fell silent, his tale at an end. For a long moment the lecture hall was still, the students lost in the echoes of the past. Then slowly they began to applaud, their clapping building to a thunderous ovation. Dr. Thompson smiled, his eyes twinkling with the satisfaction of a story well told. He knew that the legacy of Noah and Laros would endure, as long as there were those willing to listen and learn from their example. And in that moment, as the applause washed over him, he felt a flicker of hope for the future, a future shaped by the lessons of the past and the dreams of those who dared to reach for the stars. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.